I'm here talking on Skype with the composer, still to this day, after 10 years and a bit since October of 2014, not March 26, 2005, I should say, is Murray Gold. Hello, Murray.
Hello.
We've been talking about stuff and random stuff before this has actually begun. Because you did mention everyone. I mean, we're this is going out in early April, but we're talking on the eve of March 26th, which is the 10th anniversary of New Who returning to the TV. But you're saying you look back at October 2004 as the time when you started working on the show. Is it?
2014. Yeah. No, I mean people's. Yeah. Tomorrow, 26th of March, apparently, so you've said, is the day when Rose transmitted on BBC One. But to me, that's not particularly an anniversary. That's just when somebody stuck a tape in a slot in BBC headquarters, and it was broadcast to the nation with Graham Norton speaking all over it.
Exactly. The memories of a nation. When did you, just looking back, I can't remember. We talked back in, I think, November of 2010. I checked before this recording.
Right.
I don't have no memory of what we actually talked about back then. So
I increasingly have no memory of what I talked about yesterday.
Perfect. So this will all be new to us. But what did you actually do to start on the show at that October? Like, this is months before transmission. Does a musician usually work that early on a show?
Well, you've got to prepare a few things. You've got to leave a little bit of time to think about what you're going to do. And I think it was actually delivered in December, so in the end, it wasn't all that much time. I think we had to get 5 episodes done by the time. I think we probably had to get 7 episodes done by the time we were broadcasting. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to get them done in time. But yeah, I remember the first one. The first ones we did was actually Aliens of London and World War III, and then I think we came back to do Rose after all the stuff we'd learned doing those two, so that the first one had a bit of expertise behind it. But yeah, it was. They just kept on coming. I didn't know how many episodes there were going to be in the series. I hadn't bothered to find out. I don't think I don't even think I had a contract. I just had. I just sort of started with episode 4 and then went on to episode 5 and then 1, and then and then they just kept on going. I was like, when is this going to stop? And then Dalek came, and then The Long Game, and Father's Day, and and then there was a gigantic pair of episodes by Moffat, and it's like, is that it? Is it going to be? Are there more?
So was this basically just a personal services contract with Russell T Davies, then, who you had worked with before, or?
Well, I was still quite amateur about how I worked. I didn't have an agent until about 3-4 years into my career. I used to just answer the phone myself, and it was interesting. Got the strangest calls and requests for music in different places. But yeah, I mean, I just got an email from Russell and said, "Do you want to do the music for Doctor Who?" Should have asked earlier, and I just wrote back and said yes. And so there wasn't any to and fro between agents or anything like that. It was just a direct question with a direct answer.
Mm-hmm. What did you have in mind then when you said yes? Did you have anything in mind going in, or what kind of music you wanted to produce for it?
Well, yeah, I thought Doctor Who type music, mm-hmm. And then I was told not to do that.
Really?
Well, I did. I probably told this story a lot of times. People have probably heard it, but I made this tape. It was 10 minutes long. This kind of radiophonic style tape of bleeps and synthesizers, and the last minute of that tape had some strings on it, and Julie Gardner and Russell Davies, their eyes lit up, and they said, "Yeah, that's it. That's what we want." And I was like, "Oh, you want strings?" And yes, strings. That'd be wonderful. Give us emotion. We want emotion. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, so not really like old Doctor Who then. And they said, well, there might be a time and place for that, but what we're really interested in is the emotions of the series, the heart. So that's where it started.
With the use of the orchestra, or in those days, I guess, the use of the sampled orchestras. You didn't have
Symphonic library.
yeah, you didn't have much in the way of anything in the way of. I think a little bit. You had a choral choir in Dalek, I think, but apart from that, it was mostly synthesizer.
Yeah, but that was just. I mean, we did record a choir for Dalek, but the temp score of it was me singing 20 times onto a hard drive and stacking my voices, and that was what was actually used in the episode. I think we forgot to put the choir in. We used the choir later in episode 12 and 13. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just missed putting the choir in.
Did you? I mean, were you? How do you write then? If you're thinking that you want a big operatic sound, but you also kind of want an orchestra, but you don't have the budget, I assume, or the time for an orchestra. I mean, how do you sort of temper what you're writing, or do you just try and make it as big as you can on your own time?
God, I think. So, I mean, now 10 years on, technology is so much better for all of the sample libraries and making things sound like orchestras. And there's all these, people all around the world who do these magical scores using samples, and they're expert at using them. And in 2005, there was this library called the Vienna Symphonic Library, which had just come out, and it was only available for this software called Logic at the time. I was a Cubase user, so I had to dump my old software and learn how to use this new software so that I could use this sample library. And actually, the sample library, you really had to massage it to make it sound really good. And there were a lot of synthesizers at the time, like that Roland made. Like there was this box called an XV5080, which was a really lovely box where everything sounded, it wasn't as realistic, but it all sounded better straight out the box. It had reverb on, and it had delay, it had effects, and everything sounded nice. So I started trying to use the sample library with this new software I'd never used before, and it was kind of tough, actually. Mm-hmm. One of the things I learned, which I didn't realize at the time, was that none of the orchestra samples had any reverb on them. And so, I used these string sounds which were very, very dry. And I just thought, oh, well, they kind of sound dry, but I guess these are the real samples. This is the real McCoy. This is what actual strings sound like. You can't argue with actual recordings. But slowly learn how to polish them all up.
Mm-hmm. If I'm just wondering how far down the road to the original, the Doctor Who-like music you would have gone had you been given the blessing of Russell and Julie to do that.
Yeah, I mean it's quite interesting. I'd collected a good amount of synthesizers. I mean, I had a Juno 106, I had a Korg Wave Station, I had a JD 800. I had all these bits and pieces, and none of them were needed. I don't know. I mean, how far would I have gone in I don't know, because I think it was just such a different show. The series, series 1 of the reboot of Doctor Who was an incredible series, I think. It was like one of my favourite series of TV ever, just in terms of its variety and its kind of its heart. And it was completely surprising. I don't think, and nowadays, the people who watch Doctor Who expect it to be this emotional drama, this, with melodrama and comedy. But I don't think anybody really expected that of all the shows on television that would be able to bear the weight of all this excessive emotion, I don't think anybody thought it would be Doctor Who. It just had so much emotion thrown at it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think then? I mean, we'll get into the what you're working on now, of course. But do you think that that first season almost sort of set the tone, not only just for the show, but, you know, for the emotion, but the music as well. Do you think you could ever, not that I'm suggesting you do, but could you think you could ever steer it in a completely new direction that would just be like all electronic or all like synthesizer or minimalist kind of thing? Is that even a thing that could happen?
Well, if you watch Into the Dalek, Ben Wheatley's episode, that kind of happens a little bit with that. I mean, it's still, you know, the style, especially the opening of it, up to the point where they're injected into the Dalek, that first 15 minutes is very cold, very sort of 70s in a way. Like, it felt like British television of the 70s, you know, in the way that it's held back and detached, and the colours are washed out, and the kind of style, the direction is, you know, it's quite stylized. And somebody told me that it's hard to hear the music in that episode. So I didn't know it was, but because I did this score, and obviously when I was playing it back and listening to it, I played it back incredibly loud. And I'd love to try and release that episode, because I think that just that one episode, it just had this emptiness about it, and the temperature of the emotion was quite cold, and not many episodes have had that. It was very. I don't think you'd want it every week, and I mean, I loved that episode. I don't know how popular it was. You know, I don't know how much the regular audience felt like it was a break from you know what they'd been used to.
On that, I think you once told me, the last time we talked, is that you and directors don't necessarily work together a lot, just because you're like the series composer and it sort of has a remit. But you mentioned Ben Wheatley. Did that sort of change during this past year? Did you sort of, or in the past even, did you work a lot closer with some directors, more so than others?
No, I mean, Ben and me, we exchanged a few emails, which you know, on its own was more than with some directors. We actually met. We had a face-to-face meeting in January of 2014 just to talk about the Capaldi Doctor a little bit. And I mean, he was just really nice. He was just really chilled guy. And I was actually recording some other stuff there, and so yeah, I don't really speak much to the directors. Sometimes what's going to work for a director whose mind is completely set on their own episode isn't always going to work as a series, as part of a series. With Ben, I was very keen on finding what Capaldi's theme was. You know, I was very conscious of whatever we did together, me and Ben, it would be part of everybody else's episodes too. Mm-hmm. And that's always going to be the way with the first director of a new Doctor. It was the same way with Adam Smith, with Matt Smith's Doctor. And they're not so fussed about that. They don't, you know, I'm sure they care, but they don't. It's not top of their list that there's a cue in their music that is going to be used with other directors. Uh-huh. You know, but it's top of my list. It's like I need to get the sound sorted for Capaldi in this case. You know,
I want to get back to that, but I just want to like. If the directors don't necessarily have that much contact with you and stuff, do you have like carte blanche? You like say, I want music here and here, it's going to stop here, or like do you get cues in the script or something like this scene should be silent or minimal music here, or is it just you working off the top of your head?
Well, I might suggest that, but every episode, weirdly, apart from Ben Wheatley's episodes, every episode of television everywhere, both in the UK and in the US, will arrive with a temp score on it. So they're pretty much, and often there's been more discussion about the temp score and where it goes than I have time to write the music. You know, like they may have spent 3 weeks. I'm probably wrong about this, and an editor's going to come back and say, God, if only we had 3 weeks to edit an episode. But I'm just going to say, for argument's sake, that they probably have, you know, 3 weeks or so to edit an episode, and then while they're doing that, all the time they're thinking of these choices about, you know, types of old music they want to put on. And And the kind of music that they would use in the temp scores, there's like a fashion for it every year. It kind of goes, you hear it everywhere. Like 1 year, I think in 2005, Pirates of the Caribbean music was really big. It would be any episode of television that landed on my desk had Pirates of the Caribbean on it. And then the next year it was all Bourne Supremacy stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there'd be a bit of Wall-E, so it would be back to that kind of whimsical kind of music. And then lately it's been all drones and stuff, it's been all like Gravity kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
So when they do that, when they put the temp score on, they're giving you such a clear, idea of where they think music might work. And what I tend to do is try and get rid of it or just throw it all away, because, it's not that creative when you don't want to just sit there and listen to somebody else's music or bits and bobs of other people's music just thrown around all over the episode. But in other areas of the TV industry, the exec producers are real sticklers for what's gone on the temp score. They basically, they might ask a composer to basically remake that music, copy it, change a few notes. But yeah, it varies from what I was going to say was, with Ben, with Deep Breath and Into the Dalek, there wasn't any music on it.
Really? On the original the versions you got?
When he sent me the episodes, they were just clean of music. Uh-huh. Just nothing on them at all, which was really nice.
Because you didn't feel hellbound to sort of put music on where you necessarily didn't think it was going to be added to a scene. Like I remember the restaurant scene where Clara and the Doctor sort of first formally meet for the most part. It's just them in a restaurant talking back and forth. I don't think there's any music on that at all until he starts pulling out hairs and dropping them and all that stuff. I mean, was that scene kind of refreshing to sort of just let breathe and then sort of bring up music when it needed it?
Well, yeah, I mean, like a lot, with Doctor Who, a lot of the time it is spotting the silences, not spotting the cues, because the cues are there right the way through. It's a very scored through show. It always it has been since I started. I mean, Rose didn't have all that much music, although I remember at the time when it came out, everybody reacting like it was, there was tons of music in it. But actually, compared to how it became, especially, it became a convention. And, one of the tropes of the show that it's kind of scored through. And since Doctor Who came on air, there's been lots of shows that do that, when there weren't at the time. And people always used to say, oh, it's such a John Williams, 70s type thing, or such a 70s convention. And it's always struck me as being completely wrong. If anything, it's more of a 1940s kind of melodrama type of convention. Every Alfred Hitchcock movie prior to Psycho followed that convention. It had music playing under everything, and in the case of Doctor Who, is often I would often leave scenes empty of music, and they would come back to me 1 year, at different times down the last 10 years. They would be sent back, and one of the execs would have said, "Listen, can we just get some more music for that scene that you've left free of music, because it just feels lonely, and we want it to land. We need it to make an impact."
Mm-hmm. Do you ever sort of find yourself fighting for certain parts of the score, or sort of fighting for certain parts of silence, I suppose, based on what you just said?
I don't know if I'd necessarily ever fought for silence. I can't honestly think of a moment. I'm sure there are other people listening who have in their minds. Please get rid of it. I don't want any more. But no, I mean, it's just on such a high level, Doctor. It's just on such a high level of melodrama, in terms of what's going on. I mean, it is true that if you take away the music for long periods of time, people seem to start to get a bit nervous. That why isn't is this not important? And there is a lot thrown into 43 minutes, in terms of the construction of the show. It's very bulging with incident and plot, and, it's overstuffed sometimes. Stephen fits in an enormous amount of story in an enormous number of story beats in the time he has to fill.
On the topic of that, I mean, I think the last time we spoke, you said that you weren't even properly archiving your older stuff. This is just your philosophy. You just sort of do something, and after a while, move it aside, start completely fresh.
Did I tell you about my friend who used to read books and tear out a page as he read them and throw it away?
Yeah, I think so. What was the reason behind that again?
He was always traveling, and he wanted his travel bags to become lighter and lighter. So every page of the book he read, he'd just throw it away, tear it out.
Never to be read again. Then this was like November of 2010, so like the Matt Smith era and its whole new wash of music had just started. I think a lot of people, me included, when Matt Smith left the show, they were upset about Matt Smith leaving. I think they were possibly as upset, if not more so, to have his 11th Doctor theme be archived away again. I mean, that might be one of your most popular pieces of music. Did it sort of hurt you to sort of say, okay, we're not doing this one ever again?
I mean, I said that, yeah. I mean, I don't think Stephen necessarily wanted me to say that. But I tried, I basically, Stephen is the boss, and if he'd wanted the Matt Smith theme back, then he could have had it. And we had a long conversation about it in 11 and 12 with Rachel Talalay, because she told me in advance that they felt it would be a tremendous kind of moment of drama if suddenly, having not had the theme all the way through Series 8, it came back in the last episode. And I was very strongly of the opinion that the reason it hadn't been in the first 11 episodes was that it belonged to Matt Smith, and that it wouldn't be a good idea to bring it back. So I won't say we've managed to compromise, but there are a couple of pieces of music in those last 2 episodes which have definitely got elements of that piece of music in them, just so that I could satisfy Stephen, really. I mean, it's really nice. He really missed that piece. He really missed hearing it, I think. And I know a lot of people probably felt it was overused. So I felt like, yeah, time to draw a line under it. I just think it's important. It's interesting because you're comparing it to me losing all of my archived material. So, like, yeah, I do have a kind of feeling of just like that was the past. Don't revisit again. Forwards, let's do something else.
Well, then, when you set out to sort of start on Mr. Capaldi's run of Doctor Who, I mean, what did you sort of just say, okay, clean slate and let's go from here? I mean, did you feel you had to sort of come up with a theme for Peter Capaldi's Doctor I suppose, as you say, to sort of replace Matt Smith's theme, but to just have one in general, or?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for with. Like, I was looking all the way through. I mean, there weren't very clear moments in Deep Breath, like there were in the 11th Hour. There wasn't a moment where he stood up on the top of a building and told the Atraxi, with all of the shadows of the doctors behind him, do you know who you're dealing with? There wasn't a moment where he goes and chooses his outfit. There weren't clear moments of heroism, and there was a lot of running around in the last 20 minutes, and because there wasn't one single iconic moment, there seemed to be quite a lot of debate on YouTube about what Peter Capaldi's theme was. Was it when he was riding away on the horses, or? But the thing is, it was a slightly more subtle theme. It was very simple, and it was just made of 4 notes. But then it also had the rhythm going with it, and the ticka 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 and all the ticking stuff. Mm-hmm. It was very direct and on the front foot and commanding and sort of pared down kind of theme, and it didn't have the sort of didn't have quite the same mischief and cheekiness, of I Am the Doctor. And, you know, I'm not sure, I really can't see how you could have played I Am the Doctor in Deep Breath. You know, I just don't think it would have worked. You know, I just don't think, you know, tonally it suited Peter.
No, I think the new theme sort of, you know, you stripped down a little bit, more authoritative, kind of like Capaldi's Doctor, whereas, you know, I Am the Doctor's in this weird, you know, 7/4 time and mischievous, just like kind of like Matt Smith's Doctor, just sort of off kilter a little bit.
Yeah, and he's eccentric, and yeah, I mean, gangly and waves his hands around, and yeah, Capaldi's a whole different prospect. You know, there's all these YouTube sites like where they cut out music off of the 5.1 surround sound, or they get it off the DVD or something. They isolate the music channels, and they make these Doctor Who unreleased music channels. And I wanted to see what music they were picking up on. You know, it's really good for me to be able to have that feedback via that process. Mm-hmm. You know, I could go online and key in Doctor Who unreleased music, Deep Breath, and, you know, see what people had been... First of all, it was interesting to see what they thought was Capaldi's theme. And secondly, it was interesting to just see which music they responded to. You know, what music they wanted. Really helpful. And very few of them initially got it right. I mean, they were all good candidates for... But it was funny that they were looking for one. You know, like down the years that there's the expectation has developed to expect, you know, to find what Capaldi's theme will be, you know, because they're waiting for the new Doctor's theme. It's interesting to see people looking for it, you know. But it took a while, and now there's tons of little YouTube videos with Capaldi's theme on it.
There are sometimes actually containing his theme.
Yeah, and it still hasn't been released either, so there's still no official, you know... I mean, it's called A Good Man, ? Mm-hmm. That's Capaldi's theme, and we actually played it in... It kicked off the live shows when we did... We've already done live shows in January in Australia and New Zealand.
And that's coming to the UK, isn't it?
We're doing we're doing this like symphonic spectacular with like 150 people on stage and massive rock and roll lighting and gigantic video projections and monsters at the end of May, you know, starting at Wembley Arena, which is quite exciting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really... I think it's going to be really good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't go and see it. I just didn't show up. But in Australia and New Zealand, I mean, I went to Los Angeles to go and get the plane over, and then I just didn't go. I just stayed in LA. I just felt like I've just been on too many planes this year. I just don't want to. I just want to be on ground level for a bit.
And here you still are. I think you sent me a pic, and I think it went out online as well. Like Capaldi actually visited one of the recording sessions with the Welsh Symphony Orchestra. Yeah,
he was the first actor from Doctor Who ever to come and see us recording music, and he showed up, and I'm in the control room when we're recording. I'm not, and the orchestra are maybe 100 feet away in a different room, and we watch what's going on cameras. There's no window. We're not in connecting rooms, and I give my notes and requests down microphones to the orchestra and to Ben. And Peter came and sat in the control room with me and Jake Jackson and Jerry O'Riordan, and it was really nice. And we said, look, we're just going to take you in to the orchestra. It's best if you go and sit in there. That'd be fun for you, because then you can hear it, like, not out of the speakers, but in the concert hall itself, and we'll play your theme. And I said, but just remember, they're very serious people, you know. Just to have got into this orchestra, they're the best of the best of the best. Very serious. They play the musical canon in concerts all around the world. And, you know, they just do this for a bit of fun. So don't be surprised if they don't know who you are. So and then I just took him in to the orchestra hall, and everyone got up off their seat and ran towards him with pens. It's like throwing their bassoons and violins down onto the chair, and formed a gigantic queue to get his autograph.
Professionals to the very end.
Yeah, exactly. And then once the room had recovered from this convention-like scene, he just went and sat in the front row, and we said, all right, so we've never played this before, and you're here, so this is your theme. Hope you like it. Mm. Nobody had ever heard it, and it was really fun. He really liked it.
That's excellent. Another thing that sort of changed with the new series of Doctor Who was the theme, which you've done a few of them. I legitimately have lost count. It seems with every single new title sequence comes a new theme. How tired are you of having to sort of rejig Doctor Who opening title themes to sort of fit a certain time limit again?
Well, I quite like it. I just quite like doing them, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many I've done either, because, you know, sometimes they're changed within a series. You know, they're not always the same. And also, because there's multiple versions in the... You know, I don't only send one version either. There's normally a bunch of versions going around. So sometimes they go between versions in one series. I don't know. It just feels like giving things a bit of a new lick of paint, you know, to be honest. I mean, this one was probably had more of a motivation to change because of the gears and the cogs and the slight in the feeling of steampunk in the first episode, Deep Breath. You know, Ben had, you know, the whole design of it and the look of it with the top hats and the eye and it all, you know, and so there's these bells in the theme now, you know. Just seems, yeah, there is something slightly Victorian about Peter with his. I mean, he's very modern, obviously, but the long coat and his sort of austere face sometimes can you know, I don't know. So yeah, that's why we've got that.
I noticed that. I mean, is it? The BBC, I think, has like a remit now where credit sequence can be no longer than 30 seconds or something.
Does it?
I think so, but it just seems like maybe that's why the titles are as long as they are. It just feels like there's a couple missing bars now in the opening theme now because of that.
Well, they probably edit it. I mean, I've no idea because it's formatted differently for different countries as well. I know when it goes out I know when it went out in England, they were using in the United Kingdom, they were using "I Am the Doctor" for the throw forward for next week, and I didn't discover that until halfway through. Someone just said to me, they use "I Am the Doctor" for at the end of each episode. I was like, what? And they said, yeah, we thought it was weird too. I was like, well, yeah, it is weird, because why would you go into that? And that was the whole point, that we weren't going to use it. And why? Anyway, I think that changed. That probably changed towards the end of the run last year. But yeah, the way it's formatted seems to. I mean, it's just something. Anyway, the full version of the theme is on the album, so complete with the middle eight, and that's what I delivered. I delivered a version of it that had the B section of the theme in it as well, but they just didn't use it.
Mm-hmm. When is the album coming out? When do they usually come out? Like just before the next series, or I can't remember what the release schedule is.
Well, I'm always holding it up because it's really tricky to make, because once you've done a season, like this season again, there was another like 9 hours of music that I wrote, which is kind of all new. It was like, again, it was basically a reboot. There was virtually no music from any of the other Doctor Who seasons, you know, apart from the Matt Smith scene in Deep Breath. But it was all pretty much brand new. And we're doing a triple album. It's like prog rock is back. It's a triple CD. You know, and I know now that a triple CD is all right to do, but I wouldn't have done it. I would have thought it's too much to put on one release. But I know that the audience would rather there was coverage, and you know there were more episodes and more of the significant types of cues were covered. Then I try and make it a digestible single album or even a double album. So this one's the 3 CDs, so it's like 3 hours of music, I think, or 2.5 hours of music. Jake Jackson compiles it all, you know, because sifting through and trying to, you know, he does the research, he looks around, makes sure he knows what people want. We'll probably still forget to put things on which we should have done. We didn't get permission from Fox's manager to put Don't Stop Me Now on, so that's not on there. But other than that, it takes a long time to make. And the reason it's not out in Christmas time or January or February is because having just done the music, just trying to grapple with it again and name every track and write the notes and think about what to include and then to master it and everything. It just takes me ages to go back to the beginning again, having just finished. Mm-hmm. But we have finally got it. And actually, for me, this we've got it turned around quite quickly. David Stoner at Silver Screen. I don't think they've announced any of this because I don't think they've got a release date, but I know they're going to get it out before the tour, which is in May. That's before we go to the Symphonic Spectacular tour. And it is like one of my proudest releases. Like I was actually listening to it, and I can be quite objective. Like when I've written music, I don't think of it as my own anymore particularly. I just listen to it as something that somebody else once did. And I'm like, played back the album, and I thought, this one's all right. So yeah.
The Missy theme, I think, is one that really stuck out. It's very creepy with all this sort of like, I don't know, there's a female vocal going on in there, or is it backwards or forwards? I'm not sure what you did with it, but
I know it's this Sound Toys plugin, which makes it kind of neither backwards nor forwards. I'm not actually sure what it's doing because it sounds like it's in reverse, but when you reverse it, it doesn't sound like it's the right way round. Mm-hmm. I think it was called Crystallizer, the plugin I used, but it's Harley and McGee singing. It's actually it's a love song, but it's a slightly creepy love song. So it does have words, and it was originally sung with words, but I haven't put the right way round version of it on the CD. So it's on the CD as it was broadcast. So you can't. But the words are quite creepy.
Do you remember the words were? Because people are actually trying to like decipher it and actually did put it backwards and put it on YouTube. And I don't really hear quite something in there. But do you remember what the words were?
I do, yeah. Well, the last line was "Tenderly the night will come in your sweet embrace," but it was kind of about death. Mm-hmm. Kind of suited her.
Just a bit.
Well, because she was, because it was this. I didn't know who she was actually. Until, I didn't know. When she was initially seeded in the episodes in her weird little heaven.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you would have scored her differently had you known? I mean, would you just said, it's the master, I'm going to sort of work in masterly sort of themes in there?
Well, if I'd done the John Sim master stuff, like, from like Sound of Drums, mm-hmm. I think it would have just given it away. Yeah. The instant you'd have heard anything like that. Mm-hmm. Mind you shouldn't, I suppose you shouldn't overestimate how many people would have been in on that. Probably it would have been a really small number of people compared to the audience would have instantly gone, oh my God, she's the master. Mm-hmm. And maybe that would have been fun to do actually. Just you know, because sometimes it's good to divide the audience between those that realise and those that don't.
Missy, of course, is coming back in series 9. They're only sort of like 3 episodes in right now. Have you started any work at all on the next season of Doctor Who?
Yeah, I've written a song, and I've mapped out episode 3, but the song is for a different episode. It's like something is happening on screen. There's a band playing on screen, so they need something to play by 5 days' time. so I got going with that one. Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, it's funny because, like, I just decided to take a bit of time off. I wanted to do some word writing, like, the last couple of months. And, you know, when I don't have my Doctor Who to do, you just find yourself looking at the news, you know, and watching all the bad stuff that's happening in the world. And you're just like, oh, my God, is this what happens when you're not obsessively working? You just, like, obsess about... I'm like, oh God, please, just give me something. Never mind this holiday rest business. Just let me go back and write music.
And so Doctor Who offers that for you. This is, I mean, we started this whole talk about it being 10 years, and you've been like the one single line through all 10 years of New Doctor Who. Does it keep you interested and keep you sort of detached from the real world, I suppose?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, it's hard to imagine my life without Doctor Who. I think Andy Pryor's been on every one, and I think our dubbing mixer, Tim Ricketts, has been on every one, I think. Work-wise, like, I like being obsessive. I like to have something to do for the reasons I just stated, you know, every day. Because I like to have a big project and building something. I lead a pretty Doctor Who free existence, you know, in other important ways. You know, like a lot of the people around me have never seen an episode of Doctor Who, including my own brother. You know,
really.
I mean, he's seen maybe 1 or 2. You know, but considering it's been on 10 years, it's not very much. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I've been working, his own brother has been working on it for 10 years. You know, he's not exactly my number one, you know, fan in terms of... My girlfriend is like, she's, you know, she hardly watches it. She's hardly seen any of it. So, in that respect, it's not all over me, you know, but work-wise it is.
Mm-hmm. So when do you start sort of full on back scoring, and when does the obsession return then for you for Series 9?
Well, last year I was doing this big pirate series in the US, which I dropped, but I did a lot of work on it, and then that overlapped with Doctor Who Series 8, which was obviously a tough series because we were starting from scratch. And then at the same time as I was recording Doctor Who, I was recording Life Story with David Attenborough for the BBC as well. And then that bled into a show called Cucumber, which Russell did, and a show called Last Tango in Halifax, which is on his 3rd series. I was doing those at the same time. And you know, it became a really hard year. And so actually this year I thought I'd only do Doctor Who, because I'm doing a ballet in Newcastle, and I've got a couple of things going on other than the live tour. We might be touring further afield later, and I've got a prom in Bristol. I've got to write a piece about hope for the Erebus choir, and then I'm doing something else later in the summer, which is still a secret. But I was basically trying to keep it down to just doing Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. You know, I was like, I'm just going to make it a little bit easier for me. Make it a little bit easier this year. But I'm already going, so and I'll now be doing it until October. So.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back to the grind. Murray, it's been a pleasure talking to you for the show. Once again, we must not wait another 5 years to get in touch again, because I'm sure the way you do things, you'll have hit the refresh button once again, and we'll have much more to talk about.
Thanks for having me on.